All right, let me say good afternoon to everyone, and have with me today Mayor Pro Tem Dave Martin and Councilmember Tasha Jackson from District B, Chief Pena, Chief Aceveda as his president, Chief Slinker, Chief Fenner is also here, and then of course Dr. Purse, Director Williams, and who else do I have? Today, we'll also have Dr. Jacqueline Mentor, as well as Dr. Mentris, the Director of Fort Bend County Health and Human Service Department, and Dr. Scott W. Long is with the Methodist Hospital. We're going to do this in two phases today. I first want to talk about our crime situation that we're facing in the city of Houston. We know that since the beginning of the global pandemic, cities across the country, including Houston, have witnessed an increase in violent crime and homicides. But my concern primarily is with the city of Houston and what is happening in the city of Houston. And I know COVID-19 has contributed to mental health issues, anxiety surrounding isolation, sickness, death, economic downfalls, employment and educational challenges. All of that's true. But however, you cannot blame everything on the pandemic. And in Houston, we have a situation that we need to address in our city as we tackle the coronavirus as well. But not all of these situations, crime that's occurring in our city is directly tied to the pandemic. It is a crime problem that we must all work together to confront, and that's what I'm asking all of us to do. This is an all-hands-on-deck situation. It's not just left up to HPD, but it's all of our responsibility to get on top of the crime situation that's occurring within our city. Starting last Friday night and over the weekend, police responded to multiple reports of shootings, which resulted in the death or serious injuries of several individuals. One victim was a 34-year-old woman who was a victim of road rage that allegedly started as an argument over her vehicle blocking the roadway, according to witnesses. A suspect shot her and fled the scene. Fortunately, none of the murders this weekend involved teenagers, but there were 7 other non-fatal shootings in the city this weekend, and 3 of them involved teenage victims. The motives in the shootings vary from gang and narcotic related to retaliation to arguments. There's a graphic. You can put the graphic up. You know, since January 1st, there have been 44 homicides. 5 of them inside the city of Houston have involved teenage victims. And Dushan Davis, 18 years of age. Vegas Blake, 15 years of age. Raul Zarco, 17. Jadia Spencer, 17. Davion Abadi, 16. I wanted to bring that up. In all of these cases, you know, we have gotten the suspect on 1 of them. 4 of them remain at large. The point that I want to make today is that there are people within our city who know the individuals responsible for the death of these teens. And it is important for people to provide that information to police or to law enforcement or to somebody that can help us to identify and find these individuals who perpetuated these crimes. These are families who are deserving of having the persons who committed these acts of violence, who killed their loved ones, to be brought to justice. And I'm asking people to provide us the information. There are several things that we are doing and will continue to do. We have redirected funding from even within HPD to detectives and to the homicide division. This coming weekend, in view of what has taken place this weekend and previous ones, we're going to be even more concentrated in our efforts. and we'll have an increased presence on our streets throughout the city of Houston, especially in hotspot areas based on the analysis and the data that we are tracking. Already, we are working closely with constables and the Harris County Sheriff Department to have an increased and expanded presence on our streets. We are targeting hotspots throughout the city and arresting and impounding vehicles of people engaged in these street takeovers. All of these type of crimes, we believe, kind of bleed over into the other, and Chief Acevedo can speak more to that and what occurred over this weekend. There's a noticeable rise in teen violence, as I've indicated, and we are closely monitoring social media and tracking gang activity. But we cannot, and when I say we, HPD cannot do it alone. So therefore, we're asking the community to become much, much more engaged and involved. We need people to speak up and provide us with the information that they know or that they have been given, and to share that information with us to help us to solve many of these crimes. No home, no community, no neighborhood in our city should provide a safe place for people who are committing these crimes. Reporting can be done anonymously. You do not have to give us your name. So reporting can be done anonymously. You can contact Crime Stoppers, or even contact HPD, or you can contact the mayor's office and provide us with information that can lead to the arrest and conviction of these individuals. And then please bear in mind, in some cases, there are possible rewards for the information that you give. We need community and faith-based leaders to encourage others to provide information and to protect their communities. I know there is some concern by some that they don't want to, quote unquote, rat on people. But this is not about ratting. This is about helping us to keep your home, your street, your neighborhood, your park, your retail store, your business, your own family, friends, relatives safe. And again, I know there's maybe some hesitancy with providing this information, but the very information you give can protect somebody else. And then what I would say, put yourself in some mother's shoes, or some father's shoes, or brother and sister's shoes, whose son or daughter may have been seriously injured or killed. And so we are asking faith-based leaders and other community leaders to please speak up and to participate in encouraging others to provide this information. We need apartment owners and managers to provide better or enhanced protection and security for their tenants. And then let me just ask that no PR or low bonds be given to people who are out on their second, third, or fourth felony offenses. So this is an all hands on deck by everyone. Everyone needs to participate. HPD, there are 5,300 police officers covering this entire city, but we need to leverage our resources with other law enforcement entities, looking at where the evidence points to where the hotspots are occurring, and then concentrate our resources in those particular areas. So this is the number one priority as we are looking at the information, and the number of coronaviruses are going down within our city. Positivity rate is going down. We also need to come together collectively, all hands on deck, just like we're doing with this coronavirus, to bring the criminal situation down within our city. So it's the number one priority for this administration, and I'm asking us to work collectively to get it done. We will get the numbers down. The crime will go down in our city, but it's going to take all of us to really deal with it in a very concentrated fashion. Let me yield to Chief Acevedo, then I'll be back.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, as always, for your leadership and your support and your advocacy on behalf of the safety of the people of Houston. And I really appreciate you always taking a deep interest in what's going on. I don't think people realize we actually talk about these incidents on a regular basis, day and night, because when we lose a Houstonian, it's an affront on all Houstonians. It doesn't matter where you live. As you can see from the heat map that we put up in terms of our aggravated assaults, our non-fatal shootings or aggravated assaults and murders, the hottest spots are really south, southeast, south central. We do have some pretty hot spots to the west side and one up north towards the Greens Point. So what that tells you is that it's impacting all of us. And when you think about the emotional cost and the economic toll that crime, especially violent crime, impacts on our community, it's something we should all take very seriously. In terms of the 44 victims and juveniles, I'm happy to report, because I don't think we talk a lot about this, is that of all the murders that we had involving young people last year, they've all been solved, people have been charged, or we have one I know that is still outstanding, but we're very confident that we have enough here to move forward on those charges. We, Mayor, are going to continue to utilize the resources you gave us in terms of the overtime to try to put the cops on the dots when we see the hot spots, one. Two, Chief Slinkard and his team, along with Chief Finner, are continuing to beef up our homicide division. I think we've made a commitment to 40 new additional detectives. We're getting the cars and the computers and everything else that they need to get that job done, and we're halfway there already. And three, we're going to continue with our multi-agency, multi-jurisdictional teams that are out going after these characters. One of the things I think is really important that's been coming up a lot, because it is somewhat indicative of a lack of respect for the rule of law, is the street takeovers. Word to the wise in terms of everyone that's been running around. The last year has been tough because we haven't been able to book and arrest misdemeanors in most cases because of COVID. Happy to report, and the criminal element needs to know this about Harris County. The jail, in terms of the JPC, is open. It's back in business, and we're starting to make arrests for the lower level offenses, which means that we're going to be searching your cars, we're going to be searching your persons, you're going to be finding the guns and the other evidence of crimes, of more serious crimes as we move forward. This weekend, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, thanks to the jail opening up, we had our multi-agency strike team that's going out looking for these street takeovers. As you know, we had the shooting recently that we're still working on, and we actually made about 15 arrests, issued over 100 citations, and impounded cars. So those arrests prior to this last weekend would not have been happening because of COVID. They are now happening, which means we not only arrest you, we not only take your car, we also search your vehicle and your person for fruits of other crimes, and we're going to continue to aggressively go after you. One of the things that we are in the process of doing, as you know, Mayor, we really haven't grown because of the budget issues, and I'm happy to, hopefully we're going to get some relief from the Congress with this next relief package as a city. But we are identifying some of our support staff that wear this uniform, and we're going to start requiring them to start going on patrol on a regular basis to augment our uniform presence on the streets. Now, we're not going to do it with detectives because we don't want to impact our investigative load. We don't want to impact our investigations. But the people of Houston in the upcoming weeks will start seeing a greater presence, higher visibility, not just from the overtime dollars, but also from the administrative staff, including my staff, that will be in uniform, wearing their vests, going out in the black and white, and actually increasing visibility that we believe will help disrupt and prevent violent crime. We believe we'll get about 300 shifts a week. That's a lot of personnel hours, and that's a lot of eyes out there on patrol. And so moving forward, here's what we need from our community. We need you to believe in each other. When you see something, please report it. When you have information, please report it. Please call Crime Stoppers, where you can report whatever you know on a case. You can report it anonymously, and you can also be eligible for a reward in many of the cases if you provide information that will lead to arrest and conviction. The other thing that we need, quite frankly, is for, like the mayor said, the continuation with the bond issue, we'd be a lot more thoughtful when we have these violent criminals to actually keep them in custody. And let's get our criminal justice system moving in terms of moving cases, because the courts have been not moving cases, and that would be very helpful. So with that, I look forward to the conversation to answer questions.
Thank you, Chief. I think there are some who assume that because we have spent so much time dealing with the coronavirus that we don't have the time to really investigate and chase those or find those who are committing crimes. Well, we can do both, and we will do both. And so I just want to make it very, very clear. I look at these reports every single morning, and we are going to be operating in a very concentrated fashion. We want, number one, we want people safe from the coronavirus, but we also want people safe from people who are out here burglarizing or robbing or stealing or killing or in these road rage incidents. So this is not the city where it's open season. And again, HPD can only do so much, okay, can only do so much. But I am asking the community to be engaged, to be involved, to report, not to be hesitant in providing information, and put yourself in the shoes of some mother, some father, sister, or brother who has lost a loved one, or some loved one has been injured, burglarized, you name it. And I'm asking you to provide information. If you don't commit the crimes, then there's nothing to report on. But to the extent you know people who are committing these crimes, I'm asking you in the most serious way I know how, to help us, to help keep your street, your neighborhood safe as we move forward. But this city is not open for business for those who want to commit crimes in our city. Now, with that, and we can take questions then. Chief, you're not going to be going. Chief, you're going to be standing. Chief Slinker, you're going to be right. Okay. So why don't we do this? And let me bring up Director Williams and Dr. Purse, Dr. Mentor, Dr. Long, Chief Pena. Don't leave. Y'all come on. And this evening again, I've got my regular posse with me, and then I've recruited two other individuals, Dr. Mentor of Fort Bend County Health Department, and Dr. Long from Methodist as well today. Dr. Purse and Dr. Mentor will announce in a few minutes some important news about cases of COVID-19 variant discovered in the Houston-Fort Bend area. The Houston Health Department reports 1,005 cases of COVID-19 today, bringing Houston's total to 163,438. There are 9 newly reported deaths, bringing the city's total to 1,838. And even though we're calling out the number, these are people who have lost their lives as a result of COVID-19. As a reminder that no one is immune from the deadly virus, I want to send my condolences to the family and community represented by U.S. Representative Ron Wright from Arlington. It was announced today that he died after being hospitalized for COVID-19 about 2 weeks ago. So for those who don't think it's real, it is very much real. Today, we're also reporting that Houston's latest 14 average COVID-19 positivity rate is 15.1%. The good news is that that's down 3 points from a month ago, but the rate is still far too high, showing uncontrolled community spread. I know that there are people who want us to open up our parks and green spaces even more, but until the positivity rate comes down more, especially as it relates to group sports, we're going to be holding right now. We'll evaluate that towards the end of this month. We're needing everybody to work together to help to continue to drive the positivity rate down. On the issue of vaccines, there is still not enough supply to meet the demand. The Houston Health Department is continuing to prioritize the vaccine supply on people who are most likely to die if they get COVID-19, and we're focusing on at-risk and vulnerable communities. This past weekend, we partnered with the Harris Health System at Setigas Health Center, which they were able to vaccinate 600 people at that community site alone. And this coming Saturday, we expect to be at the Harris Health Center at the Guff Gate Clinic, and that's in Southeast Houston. We are partnering with federally qualified health centers and pharmacies in high-priority communities to make sure the vaccine is getting directly to the most vulnerable and underserved. Like many of you, I've also seen the tweet from the governor earlier today about FEMA setting up mega sites in Houston and the Dallas area to vaccinate thousands of people daily. Director Williams may have some other information on that. I do know that I will be on a conference call with several of the mayors with the White House this coming Friday to discuss vaccine distribution, and I look forward to that conversation. Now, let me first bring up Director Williams, and then he'll be followed by Dr. Pearce.
Thank you, Mayor. The Houston Health Department is continuing to prioritize our vaccine supply on people who are most likely to die if they get COVID-19 in underserved communities. Last week, we received 9,000 additional first doses on Friday, and we're anticipating 1,600 today or tomorrow. Of this allotment, we're using 6,400 for our area agency on aging waiting list, about 3,800 for providers in underserved communities, and 360 for previously scheduled appointments. As the mayor said, we're continuing to partner with health centers and pharmacies and high priority communities to make sure vaccine is getting directly to the most vulnerable and underserved communities. These high priority zip codes are identified by positivity rate and COVID-19 vulnerability data. Based on our current supply, we're not opening new appointments or adding to the wait list this week. We wish we could provide a date when we will be able to offer new appointments or add to our waiting list, but we don't want to undermine the trust of folks by providing a timeline that we're not able to meet because demand still far outpaces the supply. But we know that in the future, the supply will get better. We continue to reach out by text message and email with information to schedule second doses of COVID-19 vaccine. The messages contain a survey link for people to self-register for a second dose. This is extremely important because we realize that there is a lot of frustration and anxiety about that second dose. People with internet or technology challenges, those who don't receive a message should contact the COVID-19 call center 24 to 48 hours before Moderna's recommended 28-day due date. If contact information changed since the person received the first dose, we're asking that you contact our call center to update that information. Updated guidance from CDC says Moderna's second dose should be administered as close as possible to the 28-day interval, but can be scheduled up to 48 days after the first dose. We're continuing to use all of the supply that we get on a weekly basis, and we will continue to really supply community centers that are in vulnerable communities to ensure that we're actually taking the vaccine to where the people who are most vulnerable are.
Thank you, Mayor. As we've been going through this pandemic, we've been working close with several partners in the region. We've presented data here from our colleagues at SETRAC, the Southeast Texas Regional Advisory Council. We've been showing data from our colleagues at the Texas Medical Center, the CEO group. And about a month ago, we also work obviously very closely with the CDC. And about a month ago, the CDC announced in their partnership with Harris County Public Health the first case of the UK variant being found in the greater Houston area. And that was on a random sample. And with that individual, he had no travel history. And so there was questions of how he became infected with the UK variant. Of course, the assumption is that he became infected locally. And so since then, we've been working hard to identify more cases. And Mayor, if it's okay with you, I'd like to have Dr. Long come up and talk about the partnership we've had with Methodist Hospital, and then Dr. Minter will talk about the about the Fort Bend situation, and then I'll follow up talking about the Houston situation. Dr. Long.
Thank you, Dr. Percy. So at Houston Methodist, we really began preparing in January of 2020 to not just be able to test for COVID-19, but to be able to sequence all of our positive isolates. Because we realized at that time that the importance of knowing that sequence is to know when new variants are arising in the community. Variants like the UK variant, variants like the South African variant, other variants you may have heard of, we may talk about. So we really began working back at the beginning of the pandemic to sequence every positive COVID-19 test that we had passed through our hospital system across the greater Houston metropolitan area. As part of these efforts, we have been sequencing again since March. It was on this Saturday that we became aware of the fact that we had 2 isolates that were positive for the UK variant and 1 isolate that was positive for the South African variant. These isolates were found from 3 different individuals in different parts of, again, the greater Houston metropolitan area, which I think Dr. Percy and Dr. Martin will talk about after I am done. But again, it's something we've done at Houston Methodist. We've sequenced now close to 20,000 COVID-19 isolates. That is more isolates that have been sequenced by Methodist here in Houston and in most states in the country. So we've been leading the effort in this, thanks to the leadership from the hospital and leadership from the department, working tirelessly to sequence these isolates since March. And that's why I'm here today, to tell you about the discovery of these 2 UK variants and the 1 South African variant that we discovered on Saturday. And I'll pass it to Dr. Martin.
Thank you so much. As Dr. Long said, we were informed on Saturday that there was a person who resided in Fort Bend County who had tested positive for COVID-19, and this was a South African variant. The individual had traveled in December within the U.S. By way of international airports. The person returned to the greater Houston area, to Fort Bend County, and after a few days after that return, they started to have symptoms and were medically evaluated. After that evaluation, they were tested for SARS-CoV-2 infection, and the tests were positive. The person recovered. At this point in the investigation, we are aware that the household members all tested and tested negative. The person was absent from work, so there were no workplace exposures. I think it's important to note that this event occurred several weeks ago, and basically what we've been doing all along will continue to protect us. As we wait for our turn with the vaccine, we continue to wear our masks, we continue to distance, and we continue to practice good hand hygiene, and that will protect us from COVID, whatever variant we come in contact with.
Thank you, Dr. Minner. Dr. Minner is the local health authority and the director of Fort Bend County Public Health. So in the city of Houston, we got the same phone call on Saturday morning from Methodist telling us that they had identified 2 cases of people who reside within the city of Houston that tested positive for the UK variant. They're both males. One is in his 50s and is currently hospitalized. The other gentleman is not hospitalized, and we know from the first gentleman that he also had travel history domestically. And with the second case, we're trying to track that down and get more information. At this point, we have not identified any spread from these particular individuals, but our cases are much more recent than the Fort Bend case, and so we're working on that. In addition, the other thing that we use to surveil looking for variants is our wastewater. And we have been watching, just like Methodist has been watching, we've been watching for variants in the wastewater. And this past week, we found our first evidence of variant in the wastewater. And we found it in multiple of the wastewater sheds, not all of them, but multiple, but in very, very low levels. The other thing you can imagine that with the samples that Methodist gets, that's a sample from a person, and all of that sample came obviously from that person. In the wastewater, it's different because we're looking at thousands of virons from thousands of people. And so while we have found evidence of the UK virus, let me just point out this, we've not found evidence of the South African yet, but the UK in the wastewater and in multiple neighborhoods, because of the very nature of the fact that it's wastewater, we're not exactly sure what that means in terms of how many people, so on and so forth. And also remember, this wastewater analysis is brand new. This has never been done before. Remember, Houston was the first place on the planet to do this. And so we're learning as we go. And so as we get more information from that we are confident is accurate, we will share it. But at this point, the bottom line is, and this is really no surprise, is that the UK variant was not just that one case a month ago found in Harris County. That gentleman likely got infected here. It's now popping up on the Methodist radar. It's now popping up in hospitals. It's now popping up in the wastewater. This should not be a surprise to anyone. However, it should be a stark reminder to us that we are far from over, although the numbers are improving, which is good news. We're very happy to see that. This is not the time for us to take our foot off the brake. We need to continue to wear the mask, social distance, and do everything else. The vaccine is here in tiny amounts, as we're talking about. Now we're struggling with getting it out because the supply just simply isn't there yet. So to everyone, I hate to sound like a broken record, but some things are improving. Do not drop your guard. keep your foot on the brake.
Thank you, Dr. Mentor. Thank you, Dr. Long. And now we'll take questions on all subject matter.
Just if we can get Dr. Percy really fast, can you just, I know there's a scorecard there. Can you just recap real fast over the weekend? Was it sorry, Mayor. Was it two South African here in Houston?
So 2 UK variants found in the city of Houston,
Got it.
1 South African found in Fort Bend.
One in Fort Bend's recovered. The 2 in Houston, one was
One is
hospitalized.
hospitalized, the other is not.
Got it.
These are the pool questions, so they're going to be a little all over the place from different. So this morning on Twitter, Governor Greg Abbott announced the state is working with FEMA to create 2 vaccine super sites, with one likely being in Houston. How involved is the city in the planning process? Any details you can provide?
Actually, we're not involved in the planning process. We're just recipients of that text and that information, just like you are. I have made some inquiries, and folks are saying, yes, that's going to happen, but they can't confirm the date nor the capacity.
The only thing that I would add is that we just got a communication from the White House is that there will be a meeting via telephone with a conference call with the White House and with several mayors from across the country. I'll be on that call, and that will take place on this coming Friday.
COVID seems to be taking a toll on people with mental health issues. Is that being addressed?
The answer is, the answer is yes. If you can recall, up until the end of December, we had the hotline for people who was experiencing stress, anxiety, mental, behavioral health issues that they could call every single day from 1 until about 11 p.m. Now, that came to an end as of the last day in December. However, we are looking and seeing if we can reactivate that again, because there's a great deal of anxiety and stress within our city.
The city has gotten better and better at administering vaccines quickly at the sites you already have. But won't there be a learning curve that could cause longer waits as these new community providers figure out the best way to distribute vaccines themselves?
I will tell you, based on what I witnessed this, for example, this Saturday, the health department did an outstanding job. For example, at the Del Mar Stadium, that site is open for the first shot Monday through Saturday from 8:30 to 5:30, and they end up providing shots to a little over 1,000 people. Minute Maid, for example, was used for their second shot, and the health department gave out over 2,500 shots at Minute Maid on Saturday. At Setigas, the Harris Health Center in Northeast Houston, they gave 600 shots for the first time. And I want to say at one other, Bayou Bend, additional shots were given out there. So I give a lot of credit to Director Williams, his staff, the employees for doing an incredible job of providing those first shots as well as those second shots. As we get more supply, then we'll be able to get more. And if, for example, it turns out that FEMA, I know that President Biden had intimated that there were going to be 100 FEMA locations throughout the country. They've already started it in California. So to the extent, and I believe this is a part of the plan, and if they are going to provide, let's say 5,000 at a FEMA site in the Houston area, just like what I'm told, like in Dallas, what I'm hearing in Dallas for about 8 weeks, then that will go a long way in meeting the need as we set up our own sites as well.
Are you guys sharing any of your information with these new providers on how to efficiently get these vaccines out?
Well, the answer is yes. I know, for example, with the GovGate, the Harris Health GovGate Center, where we plan to be on Saturday, I know the health department has requested that the state send allocations directly to them. Did I get that right? Directly to them. So there's a lot of different sharing. I will tell you that, and let me commend even our hospitals. They have been reaching out to work with more community providers and with others in the city, which is good news. So that's a big plus. So a lot of things are happening and moving in the right direction between the feds, the state, your hospitals, city, the health departments, the various counties. And that's why it's always refreshing and good to see Dr. Mentor from Fort Bend. Because quite frankly, we're all connected one way or another. So I think you're seeing a lot of coordination that's taking place to try to get people vaccinated as quickly as possible.
And this question's for Dr. Peirce. If someone is trying to get a vaccine, reports they've had a bad reaction to getting the vaccine in the past, does that reduce their priority in line, or does that take them off the list?
No, absolutely not. Depending on the reaction and if it was the first or second dose. If it was the first dose and they had a reaction, it would depend on the reaction, but if they need to seek medical care, obviously they need to do that. And the medical folks that you would report to, they know how to report that to. There's a national reporting system called VAERS, Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System. It's on the web, and it would get reported that way. Now, if their doctor felt that they, for some reason, that based on the specifics of their reaction, that they had a concern about getting the second dose, then they and their doctor need to discuss that. But we don't penalize folks for that, independently. But if their doctor felt that they were at high risk for having a problem with the second one, then they need to have that conversation with their doctor.
I got a couple more for you. Is the HHD experiencing a delay in sending text or emails to people scheduling their second dose?
Oh, that's actually a question.
As I alluded to earlier, I know that there's a lot of anxiety and frustration about the second dose. What we're actually doing for people who are scheduled for a second dose is actually send out a link for them to schedule themselves. But I know that I've even fielded a couple of calls where people didn't necessarily connect with that, and so we will follow up if they either call us or contact us.
Is there still a 30-minute wait time for these phone calls? That's the question. Sorry.
I know that our call center is getting bombarded with calls. We've asked people for second doses, who are trying to schedule first doses, to not necessarily reach out to us, but we know that they are doing that. We're getting it on the call center line as well as the Area Agency on Aging call center line too.
Dr. Mentor, I was just hoping to clarify. I think you said the Fort Bend case of the South African variant. Did you say they traveled domestically via international airports? What does that mean?
Just means that they're international airports like IAH or.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
I wasn't sure if that meant they went foreign and then.
No,
came
no,
back.
no. Sorry.
Okay. And was that a man or a woman in that case?
That was the male.
Okay. And then Dr. Peirce or Dr. Mentor, either one, is there any evidence at this point? I know you said that person has not communicated spread, but do you guys believe that the South African variant is now spreading, via community spread?
So I don't think it would be a surprise that would occur. People have been traveling, and we know it's in the U.S. It's been in the U.S. since the end of January, and so I don't think it would be a surprise that it's also elsewhere.
Then I had a question about the police item, but I don't know if we want to get to that later.
You can go now.
Okay. Chief, maybe you could just, or the mayor, highlight, sorry to make you repeat yourself, but highlight some of the things you guys are doing differently to try to abate this uptick in murders and violent crime.
Well, I can tell you that, first of all, we're continuing to utilize intelligence policing strategy, where we're looking at our data on a regular basis and adjusting our deployment strategies. I misspoke earlier. I said we're moving 40 new detectives. Actually, it was 20 over to homicide. Hopefully that will be enough moving forward. We've added multi-jurisdictional task force with the Sheriff's Department, ourselves, DPS to work on the aggressive driving across the city. And then we've added a multi-jurisdictional squad to our ATF partners that are actually having an impact. You might have seen about not this last week, the week before, we actually got a crew of robbers. These were aggravated robbers. And the mayor mentioned Bond. That was out in Bond the same day. Well, I was able to pick up the phone to our crime gun task force with the ATF and HPD, and the next day we had them back in custody. So one of the things that we're actually doing, because the federal courthouse is actually moving forward with cases is we're referring a lot more of our violent crimes, criminals, our more habitual violent criminals to the federal system, where we think we're going to get quicker resolution, and actually they're being held behind bars awaiting trial. So all those strategies are working. You're going to see with the mayor providing us the additional overtime dollars that we're still trying to leverage. I don't think we've gone through all of it yet. That he gave us, I believe, $4 million additional funds last year. And with our administrative staff that, over the years, we've actually had to cut our administrative staff because of, budget issues in our city by 53%. So we use a lot of police officers. The work's got to get done. Having said that, we're going to take those officers and start making them go out on patrol at least once a week. We believe that'll get us 300 shifts per week, or 300 8-hour shifts is a huge additional presence. So when you put all that together, I think we're going to make an impact. The good news is, well, not the good news, but I think to add some context, that overall crime is actually down year to date, including a violent crime. When you look at all violent crime categories, actual violent crime is down year to date by a little over 1%. And overall crime, when you look at property crime, which is really important to this community as well, and a problem that we've had over the years, right now, year to date, property crime is down a little over 15% year to date, and overall, which is huge, which means overall crime is down 14%, give or take, year to date. So we've got to add some context to it, but we're not going to stop. Like the mayor says, this is not unique here to Houston. It's a problem nationwide. But we are here to worry about Houston first and foremost, and we're going to continue to leverage all of our partnerships and our limited resources.
Thank you.
And again, let me reiterate, it's an all-hands-on-deck approach, and it's in addition to HPD. The community has a very big role to play. So, when these crimes are being committed, there's people who know who these people are, and it's important to provide us with that information. So it's all hands on deck. It's not just HPD's responsibility. If you know something, it is important to provide that information so that we can help to keep your community safe. And I want to emphasize that.
And I want to emphasize something. I want to make sure that it's not get lost in this press conference. The fact that because of COVID, a lot of arrests we normally would have made in the past year for misdemeanors and Class C misdemeanors, that quite often these are individuals that, let's face it, when you're a violent felon, you make poor choices. So very frequently they have warrants and commit offenses that are lower category. We, in the past, would have been able to make arrests for those lower offenses. But for last year, we haven't been able to make arrests for those lower offenses, and it's taken away our ability to enforcing the lower level crimes, being able to go in and search cars and bad guys, and finding the fruits of violent crime. And so starting this past weekend, we are now back in full service, Mayor, which is great news. And that's why we were able to make about 15 arrests for the street takeovers this weekend. That would have happened 2 weekends ago. So we got to let the criminal element know that you're not going to get a pass anymore, that we are completely going to enforce all laws in this city, and that if we catch you as a violent criminal committing a lesser offense, where a week ago we wouldn't have arrested you for that, which means we wouldn't have impounded your car, which means we wouldn't have searched your car, which means we wouldn't have searched you. Now we are. So we really believe that's a huge step in the right direction. You're going to see some impact moving forward. And I just want to make sure that didn't get lost. I want to make sure that our criminals out there know that that's the new the new standard here, the new enforcement posture in Harris County.
Thank you. Mayor, on the vaccine distribution plan, we know you're trying to get a target to these communities that need it the most, one of them the Hispanic communities. Have you considered transportation for these families? We know Los Angeles now is doing mobile sites to these locations to try to get to these communities that don't have transportation or don't have access to emails, don't have access to the internet.
The short answer to that is yes. But The call center, we've been relying heavily on because of the lack of access to the internet and people that are not necessarily tech savvy. Not only have we been reaching out to community clinics that are in those various neighborhoods, the mayor mentioned that Setagas is one of those clinics that we reached out to this past weekend. We're going to Gulfgate next weekend. We have a list of what we call high priority zip codes. We've looked at positivity rate in those zip codes, and we looked at a COVID vulnerability index that has a lot of factors that we consider in determining that. And we're actually targeting clinics within those specific zip codes, but we're also going to utilize community groups to ensure that people who are more in touch with those communities have access to information regarding vaccine, but we're going to partner with different providers that will be willing to go into those neighborhoods. The other thing, I just finished a call, for example, with the Mexican consulate today. We have done testing within the consulate, and what we're discussing is how we can actually get vaccinations in partnership with them to people who would be more comfortable going to that location.
And if I can add, and I'll ask Chief Osveda to do so in Spanish as well. Harris Health, for example, 80+% of the people that Harris Health vaccinates are people of color, brown and African Americans. And so we are certainly advocating, for example, that there's a greater distribution to Harris Health, which will also meet the needs of the community. But we specifically chose, for example, Gulfgate, because of the large Hispanic population in that area. We've been working with La Nuevas Casa de Amigos out on the north side, which is focuses on that area. But there is no question that there's a tremendous demand and that we need to be very intentional in targeting the resources that we get, vaccines, to that population. No question about that. Okay.
Yeah, we're working on a survey that we're going to release as of Wednesday nationwide about respondents and, dovetailing in the issue of reluctance to get vaccines. Well, I can't give you the specific numbers. Generally, I can say what we found is compared to if you just say white, black, Hispanic, that black and brown folks show less of a willingness in our survey to get the vaccine. So how does that strike you to what you see in the ground here? And I guess what are your plans to combat that, to get as many people as vaccinated as possible? I'll take the answer up here since I have to roll.
Oh, that's okay. Well, number one, what you're saying is correct. Anecdotally, what I'm hearing from people that I'm around, the answer would be that is true. It's kind of like the chicken and the egg, okay? If in your distribution of the vaccine, if, for example, like on the national level, at least as of last week, if 60% of the vaccines are going to Anglos, 11% going to Hispanics, roughly 8% going to Asians, 5%, 6% going to African Americans, then when you have that small percentage going to these communities of color, it also feeds into that vaccine hesitancy. The best way to persuade people in these communities to get the vaccine is for them to know that their family members, their friends, people that they know have gotten the vaccine and there are no problems. There are no issues. Well, that will help to incentivize, to encourage others to get it. But when there are people in these communities who want the vaccine, but they're having a hard time accessing the vaccine, then it just leads to that vaccine hesitancy. So that's why it's so very, very important for us to get the vaccine out in as quickly as we can, but also to do it in an equitable fashion. You want efficiency and equity both at the same time. And I think you will start to see that vaccine hesitancy start to come down. That's why we have seen, even in this city, the number of elected officials of color standing together, Asian, Hispanic, African Americans, whites, standing together to encourage people in their respective communities, districts, to take the vaccine. So it's like one can feed on the other. In terms of our strategy for the City of Houston Health Department, we started off by doing the real big mega sites. That was good for speed, not necessarily the best for equity. So we've kind of shifted somewhat, and that is now we're providing these vaccines in more targeted communities to make sure you have the equity, We still have the large vaccine distribution sites, like at Del Mar Stadium, where you're doing over 1,000 a day. But it has to be a combination. It cannot just be one and not the other. You want to do it next? Okay, you want to do it in Spanish? I was going to do it, but I spoke longer than I intended to. So. No, you can do it, Tati.
Quiero que sepa que el alcalde es una gran persona. I just said you're a great person, the mayor. Anyway, sí, es importante que la comunidad sepa, especialmente la comunidad hispana, sabemos que hay mucho temor en muchas partes de la comunidad que no quieren la vacuna, no tienen confianza con la vacuna. Y en ese país también, si es indocumentado, puede ser que tenga temor de la inmigración. Acuérdese que la vacuna es muy importante. El alcalde tomó su vacuna, el jefe Peña tomó su vacuna, yo he tomado mi vacuna, el jefe Fino ha tomado su vacuna. Por favor, cuando tenga la oportunidad, tómese la vacuna. Acuérdese que no le van a preguntar nada sobre su estatus inmigratorio. La otra cosa que queremos saber, que sabemos que hay muchos miembros de la comunidad que no tienen transporte personal y no saben usar o tienen temor de usar el transporte público. En la ciudad, con el Departamento de Salud, va a empezar a llevar estas vacunas a los distintos vecinarios y también estén en alerta porque también va a haber transporte público que la ciudad va a estar con nuestros colegas para llevar a las personas que no tengan transportación. Así que esa información va a salir por fin del día. No tenga temor, porque aquí estoy. El jefe está aquí y el alcalde está aquí. En tema del crimen violento, sabemos que hasta hoy, en este día, tenemos 44 homicidios en esta ciudad y es muchos homicidios y mucha violencia, más de 100 tiroteos. Al elemento criminal, acuérdese que pensando este fin de semana que acaba de pasar, estamos llevando a las personas presas para delitos que son menores. Este año que pasó por el COVID, no hemos estado arrestando personas por delitos menores, pero pensando inmediatamente si lo estamos arrestando. Así que si es pandillero, si es delincuente, si está con pistolas y armas de fuego y otras armas en su automóvil, sí lo vamos a llevar preso y pensamos que con el favor de Dios y con el apoyo de la comunidad vamos a poder combatir el crimen y también bajar el crimen en esta ciudad. That's pretty good.
Mayor, this question is for you. In a week, Fort Bend County said their rental relief program will be open to applicants. The city won't vote on a program until Wednesday. Why did it take 3 weeks to vote on a proposal after the money arrived in mid-January? Additionally, Catholic Charities said if approved this week, the portal may not be ready until the end of next month. What do you say to people facing eviction that may not receive funds until April?
Well, it is true. It is scheduled to be on the agenda for this Wednesday. And then we will be dealing with about 12,000 individuals who are already on waiting lists that didn't get any assistance before. So we're starting off with 12,000. So it'll move a little quicker than what people are alleging. We're trying to move as quickly as possible. There are additional requirements with this money than before. And then we'll take some additional steps to assist people, even as both the city and the county work through all of the additional requirements that are required with this additional allotment. As you very well know, we're talking about at least $140 million. So there are some additional steps we're looking at taking that will ease the pressure on people as we work through these. How can you put it? Requirements with these dollars, and I anticipate making an announcement on the steps that the city will take in the next couple of days. I think we'll address all of your concerns.
And Chief, this question is for you. You spoke about the 40 additional detectives.
20.
20. Oh,
20 in the homicide. I misspoke
20.
earlier. I
Okay.
apologize.
20. And so they're all going to homicide.
They're all going to homicide, yes. And they're going from our property crimes division over to the homicide division. We think that surge, in addition to overtime dollars that the mayor provided, will help us. We ended up the year with the over 60% divisional clearance rate for last year. And so our clearance rate is starting to go up, and we believe that that's going to help us continue to increase the clearance rate well above the national average. I think that's going to be a win for all Houstonians.
As far as the misdemeanor arrest, as of this morning, the sheriff's office told me that the jail capacity is at 96%. So how will that play into?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to, I don't know. All I know is that the jail is open for us to arrest these people. And, you know, if that's all you're going to be booked for, there's a good chance you'll probably be released on a personal recognizance. But it gives us the opportunity to continue and further our investigation. And we strongly believe, which has been our history, when you enforce those misdemeanor and Class C violations, especially when you're in a hot spot areas, you end up uncovering fruits of more violent crime and a more serious crime. And so those folks are the ones that need to worry. I think if you get booked on a misdemeanor, you'll probably be processed at JPC and you'll probably be released on a personal bond. Our intent here is to combat and impact violent crime, which is what I think everyone wants us to focus on. But it's a great tool, you know, with these street takeovers. Unless somebody gets killed or another crime's committed, those are misdemeanor crimes. But quite frankly, those misdemeanor crimes that they're committing are very dangerous, and that's really dangerous behavior when they're engaging in those street takeovers. And for us to be able to make 15 arrests that a weekend before this weekend we wouldn't have been able to do is huge. So for those street people, just know that the task force is up and running. It's running strong, and we're going to use every tool available to keep our community safe.
Quick clarity on the responses there. You indicated 20 detectives. You also indicated back in December you were adding 20 detectives. Are these the same 20 detectives?
Yeah, it's the same 20.
So there's nothing new. It's
There's
just
a
the same
selection
20
process,
detectives.
and we're almost done with all 20. Not only we have to select them, we have to train them, and then we have to equip them for homicide. One of the things we're really happy about is that we were able to get all of our new detectives with laptops to actually be able to work on their cases 24/7, 7 days a week, which I think is going to be huge. And so hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we'll have them all on board, which would be huge.
And further clarity, Mr. Mayor, you indicated at the very beginning of the news conference that we're putting more money in towards this. Is this separate from the $4.1 million in overtime money?
I am looking for additional dollars. As you know, even the reports that came out, the city is cash strapped, okay? But we are looking for additional dollars. This is the #1 priority for the city at this point in time. And so hopefully we can get some additional federal dollars to come down. But in the meantime, whatever additional resources that are needed based on the analysis that we are doing, the data that we're receiving, if there's additional need for example, for more detectives, more overtime, to clear these cases a lot sooner, to cover the city of Houston more effectively, you know, we're going to do what we need to do on that part. As we continue, and I want to underscore this because I want people to understand, this is not just a one way to solve it. We are still investing quite a bit in the community, you know, with regards to financial empowerment centers in Acres Home, with what we're doing in the Northeast communities, what we're doing in Second Ward, things that we're doing out in Fort Bend, out in the Gulfton area. So there are significant investments that are being made within the community. Even the dollars that we are spending, for example, on small businesses, rental relief. And I do want to piggyback on this. I did hear the interview with your Catholic Charities about the end of March, with there being a total of at least $140 million, for example, for rental relief that is available. I'm not going to have those type of delays work adversely against people. And so, you know, just this morning, I had some conversations, and I'll announce on Wednesday steps that we're going to take to minimize the impact on people while both the city and the county work through these bureaucratic hurdles. So that announcement will be coming on Wednesday to address the concerns and fears of people on that. So there are many things that the point I want to make, there are many things that we're doing as relates to the community. It's not just a law enforcement arm, but there are things that we're doing in the community to address the situation.
Thank you for clarifying, sir, because I just want to get some clarity.
Sure.
You also indicated, and this is what we wanted to get some answers to with regards to bond reform. There was bond reform.
Bond reform. Okay.
Bond reform. Sorry about that. Let me speak up higher.
No, I got you.
There is an intention, surrounding bond reform when it was introduced. How is the reality, though, not lived up to how it was intended to be practiced in the court, sir?
Well, I'm not the expert on this. Misdemeanors, I don't have any problems with that. I don't think anyone needs to be in jail because they can't afford it, because they are poor. I do think it's a different situation if you're talking about people, for example, who have been out on a PR bond, who have committed felony crimes, and they've been out the second, third, the fourth, or fifth time. I put those in a different category. I think people would have a hard time saying, if you've been out on a PR bond and you committed a felony violent offense, and it's your second, third, fourth, fifth, you shouldn't keep getting a PR bond the second, third, and fourth, fifth time. Now, with regards to misdemeanors, for example, some of the numbers that I've seen, 90% on misdemeanors, they don't repeat again. Okay? So I think we have to be very granular when we are discussing this, so that we are not confusing things. But I am more concerned and speak to situation, and I've shared my concerns that if people are out on PR bonds and they've been given that second, third, fourth, fifth chance, and if they're out on PRs, then I think there are some issues there.
How much of that, and I think that's more towards Chief Acevedo, but if you can weigh in afterwards, sir, how much of that offender who is out there again on multiple felony bonds is driving the numbers that your department is seeing within the city?
Well, but let me just say, this is a situation, and I'm looking at it from a holistic point of view, because it is an all hands on deck. When I say, Mario, when I say all hands on deck, that means, HPD, we're going to do our part. Okay? We're going to do our part. We need the community to do its part. We need the courts to do their part. We need the state, for example. I would implore the state, please don't do anything to take more money from the city. Okay? Because if you take every dollar, for example, that the state takes from the city, are dollars that you're taking away from, that we can be spending on these community programs, that we can be spending on law enforcement, so don't do that. And then we need federal dollars, because the city of Houston, just on sales tax alone, we've lost about $107 million from sales tax. When you throw in parking fees and other taxes, for example, that we've lost, you're talking about $150 million. So, and there are multiple things that we are needing to do. And so that's why I say all hands on deck. I'm not casting blame in any one sector. I'm just saying we need to be operating together as partners, and not where one is working against the other. That's the position that I'm taking.
Chief, can you answer that question? Thank you, Mayor. Chief, can you answer that question with regards? I mean, like, we looked at the numbers, Chief. We've got 27 murders in which you had multiple felonies, people that are out on bonds committing these acts.
Yeah,
and how much of that is, how much is driving the crimes?
Yeah, you spoke to it. I don't think it's a secret that, and I think what the mayor is trying to say is we need to be thoughtful in terms of who's on bond. It should be a risk-based assessment. What risk does this person pose to the community in terms of public safety? Because people shouldn't be in jail for a little club of misdemeanors just because they can't pay. But that's a different category, and so it is a big driver of our violent crime, and it's not just unique to Houston. It's not just unique to Texas. It's a challenge nationwide, and so we're hopeful that there'll be some thoughtful bail reform moving forward.
Let me ask this question. You may have an answer, you may not. I know that our colleagues are all gone. But viruses on their own can have spontaneous mutations. So the other day we had some scientists from Chicago and other places talking about the Chicago variant and other variants. Here we are. People are telling, because today we are addressing misinformation about COVID-19.
Right.
People are telling the world and the international community that this variant is South African variant. This variant is British variant. And we are doing sequencing the same. If we are serious and proactive, where is our own American variant? Because a virus may mutate in Houston. The same virus mutated the same in Berlin.
I agree.
And you cannot wait for the people in Berlin to do their sequence and their work before you hide under it. So I'm just saying that we should be serious in America and take responsibility for the mutations which are happening here. A lot of what we are giving to the press is garbage. It's misinformation. because these press conferences are made to be like unidirectional flow of information. So these discussions are not done. Press conferences are not places where we ask questions only. We can comment. I am not expecting you to answer these medical technical questions, but if you want, that's fine. I just want the community and the international community to hear.
I understand.
What we are here.
I understand.
And a lot of what is being said is questionable.
I understand. I think, when you start labeling things based on their geography, and we're talking about variants, and who's to say that the variant is not a Texas variant or Massachusetts variants or West Coast variants? I agree. And variants are taking place all over. This virus is constantly mutating. So I know enough of that. So I agree. I hear what you're saying. I do not disagree with you. I do not disagree.
Final question.
Yes.
We have to rely on the pool camera. That's why, sir.
That's okay.
I was just asking, and it's more towards the chief, and thank you for your time here. You indicated in the past on Twitter, Chief, through HPD, you said felon out on felony bonds. What were you trying to convey there to the public about this? Was that you sending a message to the judicial system and to the judges as well?
Look, I think there's a lot of, COVID has really taken a lot of the public's attention, and I think it's important for people to know what's going on in the criminal justice system beyond Harris County and Houston and Texas. It's a nationwide issue, and I think that we have to look at violent people, bond decisions to be made on risk assessment. And when people are committing crime after crime, like the mayor was saying, they need to be behind bars and not re-victimizing people that should not be victimized.
Oh, just real quick, I'm sorry. After a weekend like we had, where we had so many shootings in the city, either one of you, where we had so many shootings in the city, we hear from the community and they say Houston is becoming the next Chicago. What would you say in response to that?
Let me gather my thoughts first. But the answer is, if you're going to say that, then there are a lot of cities all across the United States. We are focusing on Houston. Houston is not the only city that is experiencing a crime wave at this point in time. I was on the phone call with a number of mayors from across the country, from LA to DC to Atlanta, Chicago, Louisville, you name it. So when people are saying that, I try not to I'm not going to even respond to that. There were points in time where people were saying the city was going to be a Detroit. What does that mean? I don't know what that means. So what I would say, get a little more clarification from them first. I hear Chicago, I hear Detroit, all of those cities. What does that mean? Okay. I don't know what that means. So I would ask people to be a little bit more specific. It's one thing when you talk about shootings that took place 12 over a weekend, and in other places it may be 60, 70 shootings over a weekend. So what are you saying? Okay. I'm very proud of this city. We take our situation we're mindful of what's taking place. So there are a lot of things that are taking place. Our homeless situation, we have homeless here. You have homeless in California and other cities across the globe, okay? But our homeless situation here is so much better than for example, in LA. And our crime situation is so much better here than you will find in other cities. I don't try to compare the city of Houston with other cities. I compare Houston with Houston. And for those who want to work against that, then they can go to Chicago, okay? So let me not respond to that. I've probably already responded to it, but we'll address it. We'll get on top of it. It's going to take everybody to work together to get it done. But I'll leave it just like that.
Thank you.
Okay.
I got the mayor of Chicago here, Mayor.